I'm at the Australian National University in Canberra, where for the past 3 days, representatives from NGOs and climate action groups have been building the architecture of a new grassroots movement, the largest of which we've seen in recent Australian history.
We're facing a climate emergency. Our governments are failing to act. And it's up to us, it's up to the community, it's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to all of us to stand together and to fight for our future, to protect our children's future.
Our goal is to facilitate the return to a safe climate zone and to do everything that we possibly can and support every technology, every measure, every bit of innovation that we can to achieve what is an absolutely achievable goal of returning to a safe climate zone.
So coal is a huge issue for Australia. We're one of the most coal-dependent countries in the world, and it's one of the very difficult issues that we're having to grapple with here at Australia's Climate Action Summit, where we've got enormous economic and social entanglement in an industry that is driving climate change. We have to find ways very quickly and effectively to wean ourselves off coal dependence and make a just transition away from fossil fuels and into a renewable energy economy.
I'm pleased to say at the Climate Summit here, we've got forests and the protection of forests as carbon stores, so our native forests, as a key part of the government's strategy for achieving things like atmospheric levels of CO2 of 300 parts per million. So we're asking for the government to take action on protecting forests. We're asking for the government to increase renewable energy with a target of 100% by 2020. And we're also asking the government to scrap the current carbon pollution reduction scheme, which won't reduce emissions.
Also that this network will support a transition away from fossil fuels. It will support a transition, a massive increase in green jobs, and support a transition that is just and fair for the workers, for the people who are presently in the fossil fuel sectors.
Okay, I've worked on renewable energy for the past 30 years and also on energy policy. And I've published a book called Greenhouse Solutions with Sustainable Energy. And I'm glad to say the main conclusion of this book is that it is possible to provide all of Australia's electricity within a few decades from renewable sources of energy. But to do that, we have to install the most cost-effective sources that are technologically available first.
So we're all wanting to send a really strong message to the Prime Minister that we need urgent action on climate change. And what we've decided and discovered is that as part of the solution to climate change, we need to make immediate, deep and urgent cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, as well as protecting Australia's forests.
The critical thing is actually getting the community on board, and it's that process of community engagement and reaching out into the communities which is going to make it all happen, and applying pressure to our politicians to be getting the radical change that we need.
One of the best things that's come out of the summit is us adopting a demand for the Copenhagen meeting, which will be a meeting later in the year to look at an international agreement on climate change, adopting a policy based on the science, what the science demands, and that's a target of 300 parts per million for carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's below where we are now, so it means we need to go as quickly as we can to zero emissions and to start to cool the planet. It's a really difficult task, and that's why we need to be acting with emergency speed, and that's why we need to be getting governments all around the world mobilised in this task. If we don't, we face catastrophe.
What I think is fantastic about this conference is that so many people from so many different climate action groups across Australia have voted to try and campaign for 300 parts per million to be accepted as the target that should be reached in terms of CO2 emissions. I think it's wonderful that people from so many quarters in Australia have actually read the science and actually understand that that's the urgency, that the urgency is so great that we need to make such a dramatic turnaround in our emissions and really draw down carbon to strive for 300 parts per million. It's just wonderful that people have understood and done the work in understanding the science and are able to join together to campaign for that target.
Climate change, as we know, is a direct relation to destruction of the planet. What we've got to do is stop destroying it, stop mining, stop chopping the trees and stop destroying. And if you do that, learn to live with the earth like Aboriginal people, you will survive.
So today we've had 2,500 people from community action groups around the country, as well as citizens who are concerned about climate change, come to Parliament House on the first sitting day to call on our government to declare a state of emergency and to react to climate change and to have strong action on climate change immediately. We've had 2,500 people turn up, which has been enough for us to link hands the entire way around Parliament. So we're sending a message to our government that every single person here wants to see strong action on climate change immediately.
Parliament is seeing red today as 2,500 people have converged. We've formed a ring around Parliament House. I believe this is the first time this has happened since the 70s. This is a real climate action day for Australia. Let's have some more action, Kevin. Your message is clear.